What's up everyone? Welcome back to the workshop. In this video, I'm going to share some tips and secrets for how to make clean handle cutouts, making straight and accurate angled cuts. And we've got a couple more brace pieces to make, though you'll find that it's not much different than when we're just cutting out rectangles. We'll start with the handles. All these handles are optional, but I like to at least make 2 handles so that you can pick them up. So I'll just do the handles that will go on either side of this cabinet. I'll skip the ones that go on the top and the back. There are also other ways to make handles, but for this video, we're going to use the Penn Elcom handles. These are the handles that I use in most of my speakers. They're metal, they've got a really nice grip bar. And it's pretty easy to make a cutout for them, and I'm going to show you how I do that and how I get really clean and professional results. So from the SKRAM cut sheet plans, the handle's really just in the very center of the board. There'll be a smaller rectangular cutout, and then we'll route a groove around that. And this is the same process that I end up using for my speak-on connectors as well. Once we've got our rectangle marked out, I'll use a Forstner bit that's a little larger than my jigsaw blade. I'll go about halfway through the board with a Forstner bit, and then that will mark the very center of these holes. Then I'll drill through the center that's marked by the bit with just a small drill bit. I'll flip the board over, and then I will drill from the inside as well. And that's really just to prevent any blowout that could happen from jamming the drill bit through your piece of wood. And it's okay if it goes a little past the lines that you have drawn. That's actually a good thing, because if you're trying to have the very outer edge of these line up, when you go to try to run your jigsaw, the blade might deflect a little. So these I pretty much do right at the corners that I have marked. They overhang a little, and that way I can have a straight cut with my jigsaw. Once we have our 4 corners drilled out, then I'll just follow along with my jigsaw and actually do the smaller inner cutout. Then I'll make sure that my handle actually fits in this opening, and it does for this one. You could be done at this point if you really want to. You can just screw the handle in, use some gasket tape around this joint because you need it to be airtight. You could just screw the handle straight in if you really want to, but I don't really like this, because if you're ever planning to stack your subs, turning them sideways and laying them on top of each other, you'll find that these handles stick out a little bit, and especially the screws that stick out, you'll have these metal nubs that could potentially damage your subs if you're ever like sliding a cabinet over top of another one. I like to have the actual metal plate and any screws that are attaching it, I like those to be a little recessed past the wood. What I'll do is first I'll tack the handle in place with 2 screws so that I know right where it's going to be. Then I'll use an X-Acto knife to just cut a relief in the wood, and instead of just like a pencil line, I like to cut this groove in the wood with an X-Acto knife. And it's your mark that you're going to follow, and then you'll find when you're routing it out, you'll get a clean line with your router. With the handle still screwed in place, I have this router template that I've made, and it is the exact distance from the edge of my router to the router bit that I'm using. Mine happens to be 4.2 centimeters, but if you want to do this, you'll have to make a custom template for you to follow. If you plan ahead, you can maybe find a router bit that's the same radius as the round over of these handles. I'll freehand the rounded corners, and I'll use this guide for the straight edges. I'll screw this guide to the board, and from that I'll use that to route really nice straight edges, and I will end up freehanding these corners. So then with the router bit set a little more than the depth of this metal handle and the screw that sticks out over it, I'll route the edges and get some clean, straight cuts. I'll use like a 220 grit sandpaper just to kind of break the very edges of this. And hopefully you can see that I have a clean handle cut out without a CNC. I did this by hand. And once it's painted black, no one's really even gonna see this, but I really like knowing that it's a nice professional and clean cutout. There's really only just this one board in this entire design that has an angled cut to it at 6 degrees. And I'll show you a little secret on how I get really clean angled cuts. I use a table saw. I think you could use the track saw if you can angle it. You could also get some really clean cuts, but this way that I do is really accurate. I'm really happy with the results I've been getting. And I use the same process when I'm trying to get compound miter cuts. So that's where instead of cutting an angle at a 90 degree, we'll set an initial angle with the track saw, and then I'll run my secondary angle on the table saw. That's how I do some of the more complicated horn work on a Syntropy or a J-Mod. So once you know how to do this, you can apply it to those more complex designs if you want to. First things first, anytime I'm working with the table saw blade, I make sure that it's unplugged, and I leave it unplugged for the duration of when I'm setting it up. For this, we'll set the blade at a 6 degree angle. My table saw does have a manual angle where you can kind of line it up with a mark, but I have a digital angle finder, so I'll use this. I'll raise the blade all the way up and we'll set a 6 degree angle. Then in order to do this process, you do have to remove the riving knife on the table saw. I always recommend having a riving knife installed when you're just doing straight 90 degree cuts or any kind of cut really with a table saw other than this one. It's a really important safety feature and helps prevent kickback. Only uninstall your riving knife when you really need to, and this is a situation where you need to. What I'll end up doing is I'll attach a sacrificial piece of wood to my table saw fence, and we're actually gonna cut into this. I'm gonna line this piece of wood right up over my blade, and then I will turn the table saw on, and I will slowly lift the blade and cut into this piece of wood so that the bottom of the blade is perfectly in line with the bottom of this sacrificial piece of wood. I unfortunately didn't get a really good video of me doing this, but I did move the camera off to the side once the blade was in place, so hopefully you can get an idea of what I'm doing. Once I have this set up, I'm gonna just run a scrap piece of wood through it to make sure that it's working as I want it to, so that it's only taking an angle off of the wood and not taking any depth off of the wood. So once you have your final dimensioned rectangle, you can use this setup just to cut angles on one edge, but you're not gonna lose any wood at the bottom. It's gonna be the same dimensions, but with an angled cut. I'll hold this scrap piece of wood up to the camera so that you can see it's a nice straight cut at a 6 degree angle. I'm happy with how it worked for my scrap piece of wood. I'm actually gonna go ahead and cut this angle on my turn panel. And that's the most accurate way I've been able to figure out how to cut angles by hand. I am pretty happy with the setup. It feels safe. I highly recommend this. This is one of my little secrets that I'm gonna share. And then last up for this video, I'm gonna do this brace R. This is the front brace. I'm not gonna cut any of the holes in it. This wood is only 12 millimeters thick. It really doesn't add a lot of weight to this cabinet. And not cutting these holes really won't impact the sound of the subwoofer at all. It is at an angle, but you'll find that my process for cutting this is the exact same for any of the rectangular cuts that we're making at 90 degrees. Once I have the right length of this wood, then I'll make a mark at the smaller side, I'll make a mark at the longer side, and I'll line this up. And even though it's at an angle, it's no different. You're just gonna line your track saw up and cut it right along this line. If you manage to do this perfect the first time, then you actually already have both of your pieces cut with the reciprocal angle for the other one. Just flip it over, and then you just have to make another 90-degree cut. This is another one of those pieces where I highly recommend that once you have a piece dimensioned and you like it, go ahead and make yourself a template so you can batch out future subwoofers. And with that, we're almost done with all the woodworking involved. I'll do one more woodworking video that is specifically for the baffle piece where you'll attach the driver. There's a couple things that you want to consider before that. I'm waiting for the driver to come in. I've already ordered it, but I really like to have it on hand before I start to assemble. So we'll do one more video of woodworking and then we'll start to assemble this. Thanks for sticking around, and if you want to follow along with our progress, please make sure to subscribe.